நான் வந்து என்னோட career 6 yearsக்கு முதல் Vertisoட Salesforceோட start பண்ணேன். Okay, sorry, yeah. So I have started my career 6 years back with Vertisom as a Salesforce developer, and the journey is still continuing. It's been so exciting for me, and I hope whoever being here must be a Salesforce professionals, as well as someone is trying to purchase Salesforce as their career. So I wish you all the best, and I'm happy that I'm being part here to share my knowledge on the lightning Salesforce UI development. So the agenda for today I'm having is to cover the Visual Force basics and the Aura components, as well as LWC. So let's start with the Visual Force pages, and please stop me if you have any questions in between. So I'll clarify those and continue. Before that, I would like to check, is my voice enough over here? Do you hear? Okay, yeah. So in Salesforce, if we look at, so we have the inbuilt Salesforce functionalities, right? You don't waste time to build your page, so page layouts, or to build your UIs, right? To show the record page or edit form. So everything is built. But on top of that, in case if you want to have any custom development, so for your users, you want to customize something as they wish, then obviously we need to go with a custom development. And there comes this UI elements. So Salesforce supports us with the Visual Force UI, which is a framework that is allowing developers to build custom user interfaces. So Visual Force is something we all familiar with the web pages, right? So you guys know HTML and how a web pages works, right? So Visual Force is working exactly the same. So each Visual Force page will have a given, so as you look over here, each Visual Force will be having a URL given. So when you access through that URL, your page will be loaded and your UI element will be there. And each Visual Force is having the architecture where it has the model view component architecture, where the view is being the UI element, the users are looking at the pages and components, and we have the controller. Controller will have the custom logics which you gonna have, or if you want to extend the standard functionality, which will come through this controller. And the model, the basic data model, the objects it could be, or it could be a in a class, or it could be a list or a collection which you want to display to your users. So this is the architecture of the Visual Force page. It's same as whatever the web pages we are seeing in our day-to-day life. So let me continue with some, rather than we look at the slides and understand, I just want to show the real example how a Visual Force is working. So let me create a Visual Force and show you guys the techniques over there. Bear with me, it's due to the network connection, this takes time. I hope you all already gone through the Apex development, right? So everyone familiar with the dev console and how to use it. So in the dev console, you have the option like you create the Apex classes, you can create a new Visual Force page, and you can name your Visual Force page. So let's say, for example, for a scenario of, I'm going with test VF page. So now our VF page is created, and this is the tag, so which defines this as a VF page. So generally, if you look at any web page, you have the HTML open tag and close tag. So likewise with the Visualforce, we have the apex page and the close tags here. And we can type any HTML markups here. So Salesforce accommodate all the HTML markups. So let's say if we want to add a heading one, as we generally do in the HTML, we can add over here. And we can save this. So this is a custom page we have developed. So like we can have you can have a question, right? So how this will reflect in Salesforce. So what we can do is once you save your file, we have multiple options. So let's say, as I said, we have the URL given, right? So we can access a Visualforce by a URL, or we can connect it to a page layout, or we can add it as a separate tab component as well. For example, let's say, let me go to the account object. Guys, please give me 2 minutes. There's a network issue. I'll be log out and log in back. Thank you.
Guys, please bear with us until we fix the network issue.
Sorry, there was a net at the newly created. Sorry guys, again the network is not proper here. Okay. So let's say there's a page layout which we have as a standard UI. So we can here add our newly created Visualforce page to display to the users. Okay. So this is the newly created page, VF page. So I can add this over here in the UI. So where this should come over me. So that means we can track this and display in between any of this section. So I'm adding over here. And you can save. So this will reflect in your account page layout. So this is a newly added VF page. So we can customize our UI and bring it to the detail page. So if you look over here, to bring it to the page, I have added a controller here. So let's say in the VF page, so Salesforce is giving us the option to display the standard object details. So let's say we can add, when I say it's not really standard objects, it can actually help us with the custom objects as well. But without any custom logic, we can display any details of the object already exists in the system. So to do that, what we can do is with our Visualforce page, we can define our controller as standard controller. In this way, it will what we can do is we can get all the data from this particular account which this page is associated with and display in the UI. So that's why I have added this as a standard controller to display it in our standard account detail page. So let's try to look at the tags we are having with Salesforce in the Visualforce page. So we are having something like a global variable. So in the PD1 exam, mainly if you look at the Visualforce related questions, mainly it will be on this text. So how will you access, there could be a question something like, how will you access the username on a VF page without connecting to the custom controller? So you have to look at all these standard text, how you can use this. So let's say I want to display something like my username or my name over here, the logged in user's name. So there we can go with the global variables. And what we have to do is, this is how we will access a variable in Visualforce page. So you have to have a open and close braces with the escalation mark before you write your variable there. And then, so let's say we want to access my logged in user's name. So it goes as in this way you can access the logged in user's first name. So this is the global variable. Now we are not doing any query. We are not doing any custom logic. By directly we are getting the logged in user's name. I can save this. And this should reflect over here. So you can see this being displayed, right? So likewise, there are several global variables accessible by the VF page. So whenever you go through the related trailheads and other modules, just look for the global variables and how, so let's say if you want to display today, so let's say today's date or something, what you need to do is something like just directly access the today value. This should reflect the today's date for us. So likewise, looks for the Salesforce global variable, which can be accessed by Salesforce. And please give importance to the syntax, right? So when you develop something, obviously you will Google and get the syntax, but in the exam, you need to remember the syntax, and these will be questions for you sure with the multi-select, right? So here maybe without $sign, you can get a question answer, or without escalation, you will get an answer. So focus on each and every symbol over there in the global variables, and give importance to that as well. Okay. And I was saying that with the standard controller, we can access the account record as well, right? So how we can do that is, so let's say I want to display this account name. here you have to give the record, the fields API name over here. When you give the API name, it will reflect the record field value there. So this is the account name, I guess. So this is the name that's being displayed here. So likewise, you can access all the standard fields as well as custom fields of this defined object. So this can be any Salesforce object, any given standard objects, or the custom, the objects you have created custom as well. You can display the details by accessing in such form. So for any question out of this?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will we have standard controllers for custom objects also?
Yes, it supports all the Salesforce objects. So over here, what you need to do is, if you have a custom object, let's say service item, it will be your custom object API name. And you can access in the same format here, your custom object details.
So if we want custom logic only, we should go for the custom controller.
Sorry, what's the question?
No, like if we want the custom logic to get the data,
Yes.
we need a custom controller. If not, we can use
Yes.
this.
Yeah, you are correct. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we can move on. Just please, you can feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. Okay. So let's say to display this account name, we may need to do a conditional check. So let's say if the account, so let's look at here, if any of the data. Okay, if account phone number is not equal to null, then we need to display the account phone number as well here. Let's assume like that. I'm adding a BR tag here to bring it down. So like, okay, if the account phone number is not null, then I want to display the account phone number. So we can do the conditional logic as well in Salesforce itself, in the Visualforce itself. We don't need to really write any Apex over there. So as we write our normal if logic, you need to start the if and give the logic what you need to check. Now I want to check my account phone number is not empty. So we can check like the phone number. So let's say if the phone is empty string, we are displaying nothing. Else we want to display the phone. Okay, unknown property phone. Maybe the API name I'm missing there. Okay. Now in the current record, I don't have any value for the phone, so nothing should be reflected there. Let me add a value. So the phone value is now being displayed. So this is how we handle the condition expression. And this also could be a question there in the paper. So look for the conditional operations. And there are some inbuilt functions as well. So how you can operate the dates function. So let's say you want to derive exactly the day of this date. So those are some inbuilt functions you're having with Salesforce. So look at those items as well. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So let's say now we were just handling with the Visual Force page, right? Let's say with this account, maybe we need to add, we need to have this account details as well. But in addition to this, some logic, some custom logics. So in that case, we have an option called extended controller. So where what we can do is we can utilize still the standard controller, and then we can have an Apex class to have our custom controller logic. Or else totally we can remove this and everything is custom. From the scratch, everything we're gonna get it custom there. Then you just need to have your controller. Before that, I need to create the Apex. So let me create Apex class. So we can add this via page Apex class name as our controller. So if you see, when I remove the standard controller and given only this as a custom controller, I'm getting the error that I can access the account properties. So because this is not the standard controller now. Okay, so I have added this to a page layout. Now this is not allowing me to change to the custom controller. Let me revert this. Keep as it is and let's create a new one. Okay, this way we can connect our Visual Force page and have the custom controller, and in this custom controller we can add any logic we want to display in the VF page. So let's say we need to introduce an input form there to capture the data and save the record. So let's say how we can do that. So let's say we're gonna work on the account object. So let me create the form. So to define a form, we can define it as Apex form. And for this form, let's say we need to give a title, so we can say it as so you see here, right? You have given with the text what you need to add. So let's say when you want to add a title, you can select it as a title, and let's say something as edit account. And let's say we need to capture the account name. So we need to have a input field, right? So we are creating a form to capture the account name. So it's an input field name, and you can set the label. Okay, what is the field label we are looking for? That can be account name and value. So where are we going to store this value? So before that, let's go and introduce some variables in our Apex class. And let's introduce one more. So let's say we're going to capture these two details only from this input form and store it in our account. So we can go. So let's say we want to write this input field value in this particular account name. So how we can bind the data is we have the value tag, and then the same way our controller value account name. And our second field Let's introduce a page block section here. So we can have a separate section for our button. Let me place all these input fields to this block. Let's have another section for our button. Let's have a save button to save our form. So we can define an action function which will call the method when we click on the button, which methods to be executed, and we can give a value to the button to display. So in our action tag, we can give this function to run whenever the button clicks. We need to define the get set to access in the web page. Okay, I have to define the object here. That's why it's not letting me to access the value there. So let me have this as standard control itself. It was not letting me to save there, so I'm moving the code here. What's happening? Hmm. Okay, now fine. I didn't define the page block. That's why it was not letting me to access the account properties over here. So once I define the page block, I now can access this and save this. This being saved. So let's say how we can access this page is now. Earlier we were accessing this in the detail page, right? So there it's another way we can access through the URL itself. So let's say from another Apex class you want to call your Visual Force or something. So there what you can do is, let's say we are defining a custom path there. So there we have to given the URL to access this page. So it comes as you have to give the Apex and the name of your Visual Force page. So it's a test VF page. So this is the form we have created, and let's say I'm adding a test CD1 account. And we saw that account type is drop down. So let's say prospect and save. This should create the account for us. So this is the account we have created. And likewise, we have the record form. So we can have the display output field values as well. So let's say instead of taking the input, we want to display the field return from an object on the web page. So that we can do, let's do with a custom controller. So let's do a query. Let's say something like get accounts. For now, I'm just giving it as limit 1. So this will bring us only one account from the system, and we can return the account. We had to define the type of which return we are doing. So let's say I'm returning an account object. So we had to define the return as account object and save this. So I have given this as a get accounts, right? So this gonna behave as a get method. So how we access this is we can directly access the accounts here. And it's an object, so I can access its fields. So if whatever fields we want to display in the UI, we must query in the controller. So if we have any field which is not queried and we are trying to access, there will be a message given to you that the VF page is trying to access a field which is not defined in your Apex in the query. What did I miss? Controller. I'm again accessing this through the URL. So we can see it picked the one of the account from the, as I given the limit, it just picked one of the account and it's displaying the data. We can get the list as well. So when we have a list, we have to have the Apex page block, which is return, which is looping here, repeat the values, and we can have it as a table as well. So in the Visualforce page, so whatever I have created is very plain web pages, right? So we can actually have the CSS here. We can have all the HTML tags and make the UI more interactive and user pleasable as well. Any questions on these two, standard and custom controllers? If no question, I think we can move to the next section. And before that, okay, yeah. Okay, so if there are any other questions on the web page, you can post in this forum, or you can reach any of us over here with the Yarl Salesforce Ohana or myself directly. So we'll be answering. Okay, let's go to the PPT. So next one, for the today's topic, we are having the Aura components. So Aura component, also another UI element given by Salesforce, where it's a reusable section you are having as a component. Instead of Visual Force page, it's just a HTML, and you have to have everything. You have to write all the text there. But when it comes to Aura, this is the package you are having, which comes as the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you have a pre-built components as a controller and the helper as well in your front end itself, instead of your before you go to the backend. So let's say if you have to do any conditional logic other than if else, you need to do a direct data check or whatever you have, you can directly do it in your front end itself. Instead of in VF page, we go to the backend, the controller, and we are doing that, right? So one advantage with Aura, you can handle it in the front end itself, and it has the SLDS, the Lightning Design System inbuilt. So when you work with Visual Force page, you need to have your SLDS as a static resource, and then you need to import that to use those styles. But the advantage with Aura, this is inbuilt, so you can directly use the SLDS as well. So let's go to the Aura and how it tags and how the creations work. Okay. So you can create the Aura components by selecting the Lightning components. So you can define your Aura component name. So let's say, again, the test Aura. And over here, we can decide. So let's say this Aura component, where we are going to place it in Salesforce. Is it a tab we're going to add this, or is it a page, or the record page we're going to add this Aura? So I'm going to give, this can be a page or record page. So you can see if you don't select this, and when you select this, you'll see a difference here. In the implements, when you say where this should available, it will be given over here. Okay, this should available in the page, as well as this. I said this can be a record page as well, right? So it will be auto assigned. So let's say in case if I didn't select the checkboxes, whenever you create your new Aura, just check that it will just come as a plain component without the implement text. So when you want to then, when you create it as a plain component and want to implement, you just come over here and add the text here where this should be available for you. So if you look over here in the site over here, these are the pre-built components you are having with the Aura. You have a component, you have a controller where you will handle all the UI related logics, and you have a helper. So we connect to the server side using this helper class, and then you have the style where you can have your CSS, and then we have the documentation, render, design, and SVG. So these are the pre-built components Aura component can have. And this can be a question. I remember when I was doing a question, I think when I was doing the exam, this was a question, or I'm not sure it's PD1 or PD2. There was a question, okay, what are the pre-built components coming with the Aura? So just remember these things and the reason and the usage of this. So why do we have a controller? Why do we have a helper? Just look for those documentations as well when you do the trial heads. Okay, so I created Aura component, and let's say just as VF page, we just have some, okay, in Aura component, it's not the SLDS, but again, we can have our own HTML as well as the CSS tags as well. So let me just to start with, let's print a message. So let's say Aura. We can define attribute. We can define the data type here. So what is the usage of an attribute is this kind of a variable we are defining in the UI. So let's say it's a message variable with the type of string. So this type could be any data type we have in Salesforce, or it can be an object as well. So we can define, let's say we're going to store an object here. We can directly give account or any custom object type you want to define, or integer or any data collection. So whatever you want, you can define here. And this is the name. So let's say I want to display the message over here in the page. So how will you access this attribute is, we should have it as v dot, then the attribute name. So if you look at Visualforce page, you were simply having this open braces and the escalation and the name, right? But here in the Aura, all over the places, it could be component, controller, helper. Wherever you want to access an attribute, then you need to access it as a v dot, the attribute name. And let me assign a value here. Sorry. Let's say in the Apex, when the page loads, we have the controller. Likewise, on the Aura to run in the on the component load, we have a method on init method. So we can define that. Let me come back to that later. Let's just print this. I'm just first. Let's go and add this to a layout. So let's say our Aura component is created. We are having an attribute and we are passing a message. Now where we can plug this component in our Visualforce page, I have given for the record page as well, right? So let's go and add this into our account record page. So our newly created component should be available here. So we can drag this and add over in our record page. To add this to the page only, we should be looking at this implement tags, right? So if I remove these tags, if you go, when you develop and see, if you remove these tags, when you go to the layout, when you go to the record page, this will not be displayed to you. It could be the reason you didn't implement where this should be available in your Visualforce, in your Salesforce. So I have added this and saving. Okay, this is saved. So now when I go to the detail page, this should be available for me. Okay, so I didn't give any text, right? So it's just hi there. So this is what I have added. So let's say how we can connect this component and controller here. So let me remove this part. So let's have an example that we need to calculate something. So let me go with Aura. We need to define a name of our attribute. Let's say we want to display the total and type. So as we're going to calculate something, this can be integer. So let's say I'm having two integers. So something as number one as, let's say, 10. Num2 as 2 maybe. And under this, I want to display my total, let's say. So as I said, whenever we want to access the attribute, we should have the V there and have the attribute name. Let's have a button. So the lightning button. Let's say one button we can use for the addition. So I'm adding this as addition. And let's have another button. Let's do the divide over there. Okay, let's introduce two actions for this button in our controller. So let's say, okay, we can have a function as calculate. Okay, on this button, so let's say on this function, let's what do? Based on this button click, let's try to identify which button is clicked, and based on that, let's try to do the addition and division based on this given values. So let's say I want to read this button, which button is being fired. So how we can do this is, so let's say introduce a variable JavaScript variable. Now this is a JavaScript, right? This controller and helper will be on JavaScript. So let's write the JavaScript function. So let's say we can have it as button name. So we need to identify which button clicked. So equal to, we can get it as event. So you can see there are three parameters. One is component, other one is event, and the helper. So now using this event function, we are identifying which event fired this. So it will be event dot get source. So this will give us the button which is fired out of these two. So we can store that in the button name, and then we can check. We need to check the, let's say if the label is equal to addition, then do the addition. If the label is equal to divide, then do the division. Okay. So let's say, let's write the label as well. Now we have the button source here. So what we can do is button source dot get label. So now we have the label out of this, which button is that. So what we can do the if logic as we do generally. So if button label equal to addition, then let's say we're gonna add these two. So if we add these two, I think the total will be 12. So let me assign 12 to the component. So how we assign a value to the component attribute is this the way, this the tag. So let's say we have to access component that we have in our parameter dot set. So when we read it as a get. When we set, we go with as a set component dot set our attribute name. So my attribute name is b dot total. So it's b dot. Let me copy that and come. And what is the value we're gonna assign? So wait, we should have the quotes here. And if it is addition, 10 plus 2 is 12. And let's say we need to repeat this. If the button is division, our total will be 2, 10 divided by 2 will be 5. I know we can make it better. You can have this as an input field and get this and improvise just to show how this binding happens. I have this as an example. And what did I do? We can save this. Let's try this out in our UI. Okay. When I click this addition, we expect this to be 12. Okay. I'm sorry. So we need to mention the function which should be executed on click, right? So let's say so now we are accessing a controller method. So it's c dot the method name, the calculate I'm accessing. So you can save this. And the same for the divide as well. Not defines. Okay, which is we should have the codes everywhere. My spelling mistake. Somewhere I have given the component as component. Let me find where I say it. Okay. Okay, you can see the addition is being displayed as well as divide is 5. So this how we communicate between component and controller. Let's try to look at how we can utilize the helper and do the server-side connection after the break. Yeah, and before that, if there are any questions, is it clear? Is it useful? Or is like can't understand anything? Okay, I take the silence as there's nothing to ask. So let's have a break and come back. Yeah, 30 minutes. Yeah, let's connect after 30 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Hi team. So let's join after 15 minutes. We can have 15 minutes break since in-persons people need to have the snacks. So you also can have something and we'll connect back in 15 minutes. So sharp 4 o'clock, we will start back.
Hi everyone. Okay, let's start with where we stopped. So if there are any question during this break or anything to clarify what we gone through so far. Okay, so let's continue. So now we saw in Aura how to connect the controller, right? So next, let's see, I told that Aura is having the inbuilt SLDS, right? So let's see how the SLDS works and how we can use the SLDS tags here. So let me comment everything over here. And yeah, this is how you do the commenting. Just look at these things as well, because I remember these kind of questions were there. How do you do the commenting on the component, on the JS, and in the Apex as well? So this is how we comment the components. So I have some sample SLDS, so I'm just getting that instead of typing everything. And if we need to use the inbuilt SLDS, we need to extend that. So there is a tag available for us as extends. So this is the tag we use to extend the SLDS to utilize the inbuilt SLDS style. So we can get this and let me save. And then no component name markup SLDS. Okay. Force SLDS. Okay. We can have a lightning component instead of component. We can have an application where we can add our extends. I hope this should work. Yeah, and then we can actually call our component within this application. This is how you will add a component into the application. So you have to start with C and you need to give your component name. So our component name is test aura. So when you have the application, you can do the preview directly here before you assign to a application in Salesforce, or before you put it into a record page. You can directly verify this from the preview. For that, let me save this as well. Let's go to the app and do the preview. So these are the styles I have added. So if you see, as I extended the force SLDS here in the component, I have given the SLDS classes. So these are coming from the extended SLDS package, which is inbuilt in Aura. So if you see, here is the icon coming from standard icons, and how the page block is set up. So this is the layout item over here. So all these are UI is inbuilt. The CSS are there. We can just use those. So let's say this form I have created to create some accounts here. So let's see how we can have the input form here. We can define our attribute. So let's say I'm going to capture the account details. So I'm giving it as account. And the type. So I told, right, so we can have any data types here. So this time we can give it as an object. So let's say I want to capture the account details. So I'm giving the type as account. And we can set the default. So let's say in this account attribute, in this account record, what are the fields we're going to capture here, so that we can add it as default. So we can set our S object. What is the S object? We are trying to store the data. So that is account. So let me get the S object, and the name of the S object is account. And in this account object, what are the fields we are trying to capture, so that we can define. So let's say name. This is what we did in the web page as well, right? So we can give it as name, and by default this is empty, and we are going to capture the type. This is a JSON format we are typing over here. Do I have all the required clauses here? I have open braces, close braces, open this, and outside. Yeah. So let's say a subject type is account, and we're going to capture the name field and the type field. So we are setting this as a default format for this. So this is set. Now let's say over here, inside the layout items, we can have the form to input fields to have to capture the account name and the type details. So let's type it over there. So we can introduce an input field. So we can define what is the label here. Let's say account name. And the name. Now name will be the key for us. So let's say account name here and the value. Where are we going to store this value? If you remember from the previous session, we always should go with V and the field names. So let's say it will be new. So our attribute is new account here. So we're going to store this in new accounts name field. So over here, it should be same as this name we have given in the attribute. So new account dot name. So this is how we are binding the data to our attribute here. And let's have another input field for the type. We're going to store this value in the account object type field. So this is done. So now we need to have a save buttons to store this data. The button we can define the label. Sorry. Save. And now we can use the SLDS tags, right? So this will give us a very plain button. So let's say if we want to define this, we can introduce any class. So let's say I'm adding a CSS class from SLDS here. So it will give us a medium size button. Instead of this medium, we can set it as small and large as well to define the size of the button. And we can have a variant. So in the variant, what we can give it as, so let's say if it is error kind of button or alert kind, so those we can decide with the variant over here. So let's set the variant as a brand. Okay, we have our input form ready. Okay, input field, lightning input font source. I think somewhere I have a spelling mistake. இன்னும் இருக்கு அங்க இருக்கு sorry No, Varun. Okay. Okay. So we can review this. So this is the newly designed account capture form. So if you wonder where did I get these tags and how do you know how the SLDS tags? So we have the Lightning design system from Salesforce. From this source, you can get all the related style sheets and the classes you need. So over here, if you look at this alert, so just for an example, let's say if we want to show a warning, so this the Lightning SLDS classes you can make use of to show the warning. So here you can get all the SLDS to develop your customized UI with these custom CSS. So if needed, I can share this in the chat. Okay, we have the form to capture. So we can quickly do how we can write this and pass to the server side. So now our component is ready. So on the button click, we need to pass it to the controller. So let's have a controller method. So I'm having it as a create account, right? So this is not needed for us now. So I think this commenting and all, see the formats. I remember when I was facing, there were questions on these comments as well. Okay, let's say we're gonna create an account. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get this account over here, what we assign these values and pass it to the helper because server-side logic will always handle in the helper. So in the controller, what we need to do only the passing. So let's create a new variable. Always quotes and V. Maybe in the multiple choice, you may have an option without quotes. So be careful, always this is with the quotes and starts with V. So now our attribute name is new account. So we have stored the captured input values of this new account on this new account variable. Now we need to pass this to helper. So before we pass this to helper, we need to have a function in the helper. So let's have the function. I'm going to change this as again a create account. Let's have all the parameters of component controller and helper. We may not need the helper. Okay. Before I continue this, now if we want to move this to the server side, we need to have a Apex as well, right? So let's create, we already have Apex. I created an Apex, right? I'm going to use the same Apex class I used for my Visualforce page. So this is our Apex. So in our component, we need to add our custom controller. Then only we can connect to the server side. So this is the way we connect the server side controller with the Aura component, same as Visualforce page, just controller and your Apex class. Now in the Apex class, let's write a method to save an account. Let's assume we got this account object from here, right? So this will be obviously passed to our controller through the helper. So let's have that as a parameter. So let's say we will have an account type. New account. So without much logic, I'm just gonna directly update this. Sorry, insert. If I define this method as a public void my method, we can't access this method in the controller of the helper of this Aura, because there should be a syntax given. We have Aura enabled. Only the Aura enabled methods will be available in your Aura to access. Let's say we have two methods, right? If you just have a method and check, you will not have you can't access this method, but you can access the Aura enabled, and always Aura enabled method should be static. I'm not gonna return anything, so I just keep it in void. So now, so this will be a question for sure. How would you access the server side controller method? That's the Aura enabled keyword. So now we can access this from our helper. First, we need to get the variable what we are having the new account, right? So let's pass that. So we are gonna pass this to our helper. So let's say these parameters you need to be careful, right? If you want to access something from your UI component, then you need to have the component parameter. If you want to identify which button or which field or which checkbox or something triggered this, you need to have the event. And if you want to pass something to the helper, then you need to have the helper defined in this function. Otherwise, you will be getting errors. So let's say helper dot what's the method I created there? Create account. So here we can pass the component. If we gonna return something to the component, then we can pass the component and the our attribute, which having the account data. So we are passing this to. And in a JS, I have event. We are not dealing with event, so I'm deleting the event. And I should have a parameter to capture my new account. So now we have passed the attribute of new account from the UI to the controller, from the controller to the helper. Now we need to pass this to our Apex to insert the data, right? So to create account, so let's we can define an action. Look at these keywords. These will be important for you in your exam. So action is the one which is there in our controller. So we can mention it as so what is the method we have given in the Apex? That's create account. So we are defining an action here. So c.account. So this the method this is the action we're gonna call out from here to store the account. I'm sorry. And if we need to pass any parameters with this for this method that we define as action. So this now we store it in the action, right? So action dot set parameter. These are the keywords. Set params. We will pass it in a JSON format here. So let's say we need to pass the new account. So here, as a when we deal with a JSON, your attribute name should be same as your receiver's name, right? Okay, as this it should be same as this variable name. Then only when we send it as a JSON, when it reaches through this method, it can identify which parameter we have passed for which variable, right? So this should be same. So for the new account of Apex, I'm passing a new account of this. So let's say if you have any additional parameters, you will just have a comma. And let's say we have a string there, string name. For an example, if we are having multiple parameter, you will add the values here. So this is how it works. As a JSON format, you will pass your data. So now just we are passing one single record. So this is fine. So we have set the parameter to this method. Then we need to set the callback for this method. So this is the keyword for that, set callback. We can capture the state of the response we are of the request we are making. We can check whether it's a success or it's a failure, whether it's returning 202 or what is the message it's returning. We can capture dot get state. It will give us a success or failure method if we do the get state. Let's say only if this state is success, we can have a success message. Let's have an alert for now. So this is the keyword enqueue action, which will, okay, we have defined everything here, right? But we didn't yet let the action to fire. So this is the keyword which will let the action to fire. So with this, for this method, with this parameter, it will enqueue the action, and the action callback. Once the action is success, I mean, like when the request is sent and when the response is received. So we will check the response state, whether it's a success or error. And if it is success, we're going to do an alert. Else, I didn't handle it. We can handle, and we can do the exception handling as well in the JS2. So I'm just saving this. Okay, let's see whether this works. Application. Did I complete everything? Controller ready. Application ready. Helper ready. I passed it to the here. Okay. I didn't get the alert. Where this got saved at least. Okay, I think I didn't define the action in the button. Yeah. We need to call our controller action. Okay, wait. Okay, my mistake. I'm not accessing the component, right? I'm accessing the controller, so that should be C. Okay, account created. Mhm. Some Apex issue, so it's not inserting my account. Okay, let's move on. Something happening, but this is the way we connect to the server side, and we can insert or update any data, or we can do any custom logics needed there. Okay, any questions over here? How we connect to the controller or helper? Okay, so if not, we can move to the next one. And before I move to the next one, okay, so in the Aura components, we have the events. So events also plays a major point over here. So we have the application events and we have the component events. So this is the components we were handling, right? So from one component, in this component, from one component to another one, we were passing the, we were capturing the events based on this event parameter. Likewise, we have the application event. So where you can pass the component, the parameters or any variables or any required data from one component to another component within your given application. So let's say you have two applications here as another application. And if you need to pass data from one to another one over here, you can make use of events and pass the data. So look on those topics as well. Okay, so all these are covered in Trailhead. So when you go with Trail Mix for your PD1 preparation, you can get more details on this. Let me quickly move to the LWC. Okay, so when we come to LWC, LWC is again another web development for Salesforce, which is having which is actually focusing on developers as well with the user experience. So when you look at Aura, you see that you are having the component controller helper to pass the data, right? So when it comes to Yeah, sorry, give me a second.
Yeah, team. So I think I'm audible. So we can make LWC as a separate session since it's not only for PD1. PD1, you need only the basic of LWC, and we will make it as a common session so everyone can get benefited out of that. So, and it's almost 5 o'clock. So I think you all might be also tired. So we will take the LWC as a separate session. We will cover it in the next sessions. Any questions or any concerns on those things? Okay, then we'll bind this session and we will meet in the next session. We'll give the update about the next sessions in the WhatsApp group. Thanks all.